God, let it saturate your entire consciousness. The idea that the moment you ask, it is given. The moment you desire, it is already fulfilled. That your prayer, your deep yearning, your silent whisper to the infinite has already been heard, accepted, and affirmed with a resounding, not in the distant future, not in some far-off heaven, but now, right now. The answer was given the instant you imagined it. That is the great secret. That is the mystical truth, buried in scripture, veiled in symbolism, and yet so plain to the awakened mind. Act as if God already said yes to your prayer. You see, the imagination is not just some tool for the artist or the child. It is God Himself operating in the human soul. Your imagination is the divine creative power. Every time you imagine, you are speaking directly to God. For you and God are not two. The consciousness within you that thinks, feels, and dreams is the very consciousness of the eternal being. And when you imagine something lovingly, something noble, something good, it is God imagining through you. So if you have prayed and imagined and yearned, then stop begging, stop doubting, stop repeating the same prayer over and over as if God is deaf. He is not deaf. He is your own wonderful human imagination. And He heard you the moment you felt the desire. He said, "Yes, my child, it is yours. Take it." But now the responsibility lies with you, not to force it, not to figure out the how, but to simply live in the end, to act as if it's done, to walk through the world in faith, knowing that what you asked for is yours already. This is not a new idea. The ancient prophets knew it. The mystics whispered it, and Christ Himself demonstrated it. Did He not say, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours"? Notice He did not say, "Believe that you will receive it." He said, "Believe you have received it." That is past tense. That is the language of already done. And that is what I am here to remind you of today. Act as if God already said yes to your prayer. But how do we do that? We do it through assumption. We assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. We enter into the state of the answer, not hoping, not pleading, not doubting, but confidently knowing that it is already accomplished. If you prayed for healing, walk as the healed one. If you prayed for love, speak as the beloved. If you prayed for abundance, think from wealth, not towards it. The key is in the direction of your assumption. Are you thinking toward the thing desired, or from the state of already having it? There is a world of difference between these two. To think toward is to say, "I hope it happens, I want it, I don't have it yet, but maybe one day." But to think from is to say, "It is done, I have it, I am it." And this shift, this subtle, invisible shift, is the bridge between desiring and manifesting, between hoping and having, between lack and fulfillment. Let us never forget that imagination creates reality, and reality is not bound by facts, circumstances, or appearances. What you see around you right now is only a reflection of your past assumptions. Your current state of consciousness determines your future. If you remain in the state of lack, no matter how much you beg God, your reality will echo back more lack. But if you boldly assume the state of fulfillment and persist in that assumption, the outer world must rearrange itself to reflect your inner conviction. You are not waiting on God. God is waiting on you. You must become the embodiment of the thing you ask for. That is how faith works. Not faith in a God out there, not faith in a future outcome, but faith in the unseen reality already present within you. That is the faith that moves mountains. That is the kind of faith Christ marveled at. Your faith has made you whole, He said, not your pleading, not your performance, not your perfection, but your faith. Your belief in the invisible made visible. Your unwavering conviction that what you asked is already yours. You see, all things exist in imagination. There is no new creation. Everything you could ever want, dream of, or hope for already exists as a possibility, waiting to be claimed. And the moment you imagine it and feel it as real, you activate that possibility. You give it substance, you birth it into form through assumption. So again I say, act as if God already said yes, because He has. He said yes the moment you believed. He said yes when you imagined. He said yes when you felt the thrill of the fulfilled desire. even if only for a moment. The issue is not with God's answer. The issue is with your continued acceptance or rejection of that answer. Do you return to the state of doubt? Do you rehearse the problem again and again in your mind, or do you persist in the state of the solution, knowing the answer is already yours? Persistence is the secret. It is not enough to assume for 5 minutes and then spend the rest of the day contradicting that assumption. The mind must dwell in the state of answered prayer. It must feast on the feeling of fulfillment. It must rest in the peace of already having. That is true prayer. True prayer is not words. It is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That is the incense that rises to heaven. That is the signal that creation is complete. I once knew a woman who desired reconciliation with her estranged daughter. Years had gone by with no contact. She had prayed, begged, written letters, and received nothing in return. Then she heard this truth, that prayer is assumption, that to act as if the prayer is already answered is the key. So she did something simple but profound. Each night before sleep, she imagined her daughter calling her, hearing her voice say, "Mom, I've missed you." She felt the warmth of that scene. She felt the joy, the forgiveness, the reunion, and she fell asleep in that state, night after night. 3 weeks later, the phone rang. It was her daughter. No explanation, no coincidence. That is the power of assuming the prayer has already been answered. That is the power of acting from the end. I ask you now, what would you do differently? If you knew your prayer was already answered, how would you move, speak, carry yourself? What emotions would fill your heart? What thoughts would occupy your mind? That is the state you must enter. Not because it might work, but because it is law. The law of assumption states that what you assume to be true becomes your reality. Not because God rewards you, but because God is your assumption made flesh. Scripture tells us, let the weak say, I am strong. Not let the weak ask to be strong, but say, I am. That is the pattern. That is the secret code. Claim it before it appears. Assume it before it manifests. And so it shall. The world will call this madness. They will say, you're pretending. You're delusional. Look at your bank account, your body, your relationship. It hasn't changed. And I say to you, the outer world always lags behind the inner world. Your job is not to convince the world, it is to convince yourself. And when you are convinced, when you feel it as real, despite appearances, the world must conform. For it is written, as within, so without. Act as if God already said yes. Carry yourself like the one who already received. Dress, speak, walk, and think like the man or woman who has it all. For you do. In the unseen realm, it is yours already. It is only a matter of time before it becomes visible. But time is not your concern. Faith is. And faith is not idle hope. Faith is knowing. When you imagine a scene that implies your wish is fulfilled, and you feel it deeply, you set in motion unseen forces. These forces are not random. They are precise, and they will work together through people, events, opportunities, and even apparent setbacks to bring your assumption into physical reality. But you must not waver. You must not entertain the opposite. You must become deaf to the old reality and alive to the new. That is acting as if God already said yes. Think of yourself as an actor on the stage. You are not pretending. You are becoming. The role you assume over time becomes your identity, and your identity shapes your experience. So if you consistently assume the state of the answered prayer, you eventually embody it. It becomes natural. It becomes obvious. And then it becomes real. So many suffer not because they are unworthy, but because they do not persist in the new assumption. They dabble in imagination, but retreat at the first sign of contradiction. They test the waters but never fully commit. But you must commit. You must live from the end. You must make the state of the answer more real than anything else. That is the only way the promise can be fulfilled. Remember this, it is not your job to know how. That belongs to the deeper intelligence, the divine wisdom, the God within. Your only task is to remain faithful to the end state, to feel it real, to rejoice in advance, to thank before receiving. That is the language of creation. That is the code that unlocks miracles. So when doubt arises, and it will speak to it gently but firmly, no, I know my prayer is already answered. I feel it, I see it, I am it, and return to the state. That state is your home. That state is your dwelling place. That state is your real identity. Everything else is illusion. When you understand this, you no longer beg God for crumbs. You realize you are the divine in form, that your imagination is God's voice, that your desires are not random. They are the whisper of the infinite calling you to remember who you are, to remember your power, to remember that all things are possible. So again I say, act as if God already said yes to your prayer, because He did. Now take up your bed and walk. Speak the word and it shall be so. Feel the wish fulfilled, and watch the world bend to your assumption, not by force, not by effort, but by law. For you are the operant power. You are the chooser, the dreamer, the creator. And your assumption held in faith is the only prayer you ever need. As you continue in this state, this sacred place where your heart is already full, your body already healed, your bank account already overflowing, your relationships already loving and harmonious, you begin to notice subtle shifts, not always dramatic at first, but real. You walk into rooms and feel differently. You speak with a quiet confidence. You stop seeking validation or proof because the proof already lives within your feeling. This is not self-deception. This is self-creation. You are no longer reacting to life. You are authoring it. You are no longer wishing. You are choosing. You are no longer waiting. You are remembering that it is already done. Something beautiful happens when you live this way. Life starts to mirror back to you the very assumptions you've planted. A conversation appears out of nowhere that confirms your inner belief. An opportunity arises seemingly by chance. A door opens you didn't even knock on. Why? Because you were already living in the reality where it had to happen. You didn't chase it. You magnetized it. You didn't strive for it. You assumed it. That's the difference between those who wander in circles of delay and frustration, and those who move swiftly into fulfillment. The difference is not talent or fate, but assumption. When you assume God said yes, you change your frequency. You stop talking about the problem. You stop seeking sympathy or explaining why it hasn't happened yet. You stop identifying with your old story. You let go of the pain, not because it wasn't real, but because it is no longer necessary. You stop giving life to what you do not want. You stop reliving scenes that break your heart and begin to replay the scene that builds it. You choose to believe, against all appearances, that the world is conspiring in your favor. You do not need to control the characters. You do not need to direct the scenes. You only need to hold your inner script. The scene that implies the end is already here. The feeling that what you prayed for is now your reality. That is your work. That is your only work. I tell you, the one who dares to live this way will appear to walk in miracles. Others will call it luck. They will say, "How did you do it? How did everything fall into place for you?" And you will smile, not because you're hiding anything, but because you know the truth is too simple for the complicated mind to accept. You know the real magic was not outside but within. You know that the greatest power you ever wielded was your willingness to assume, feel, and live as though God had already said yes. And so He did, long before you saw any outer change, long before the evidence appeared, long before the world confirmed it. God said yes the moment the seed of desire was born within you, for desire itself is proof of the possibility. You would not long for something that wasn't already yours in some higher dimension of being. The yearning you feel is not a void. It is a calling, a reminder, an echo of your true self nudging you back into alignment with the reality that has always been yours. This is why it is said, "Ask and it is given." But few understand the mechanics of that giving. They ask but then doubt. They ask but then look around and see no change, and assume nothing happened. But everything happened. Everything began shifting the moment you imagined it. The roots of your prayer sank into the soil of consciousness. But like any seed, it must be nurtured in silence, watered with faith, and given time to rise above the surface. When you act as if God already said yes, you are tending to that seed. You are protecting it from the harsh winds of disbelief. You are warming it with the sun of your inner knowing, and without even realizing it, you are becoming one with the very thing you asked for. You are no longer separate from your desire. You are it, and it is you. There is a great peace that settles in when you finally understand this, a divine relaxation. You no longer chase. You no longer strive. You live in trust. You walk by faith and not by sight. The need to force things dissolves. You stop trying to make it happen because you already know it has happened, and so you go about your day differently. Not with tension, but with lightness. Not with fear, but with expectancy. It is this expectancy that magnetizes, this inner certainty that transforms delay into divine timing, this silent agreement with the universe that says, I am ready, I accept, I already received. That energy is felt by all. People respond to it. Opportunities find you because you are no longer vibrating from need, but from fulfillment. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the confidence of one who knows the law and lives by it. The longer you dwell in the state of answered prayer, the more natural it becomes. It moves from a mental exercise to a lived identity. You no longer have to remind yourself to believe. It becomes automatic. The state of having becomes your new normal. And in this new normal, the miraculous becomes mundane. What once felt impossible is now just a part of who you are. Do you see now? You were never meant to beg. You were meant to create. You were never meant to struggle with the universe. You were meant to cooperate with it. You were never meant to wait for a sign. You are the sign. You are the living evidence of answered prayer, walking this earth clothed in the invisible fulfilled. And as you continue to live from that space, quietly, confidently, joyfully, you become a channel through which others remember their own power. You become the walking demonstration of what is possible when one assumes that God already said yes, and your life becomes the sermon. Your life becomes the sermon, the living, breathing testimony that faith is not merely belief in the unseen, but union with it. You no longer need to convince anyone. You no longer need to defend your vision. Your being speaks louder than words. Your presence carries the weight of knowing. People begin to feel something around you, though they may not be able to explain it. They sense your ease, your trust, your quiet confidence, and it awakens something dormant within them. They see a light in your eyes that was not there before. They notice how you speak of your future as though it were your present. They witness how you refuse to entertain lack, doubt, or fear, how you are so rooted in your inner conviction that even chaos cannot shake you. You have become the embodiment of answered prayer. You are not waiting for miracles. You are walking as one. When obstacles arise, as they sometimes will, you do not crumble. You do not panic. You smile, because you know appearances are but shadows, echoes of old assumptions dying away. You know the only thing that matters is the state you continue to occupy, and so you return to it again and again, like a sacred altar. You don't ask, when will it come? You declare it is already here. That declaration is power. That inner claim is creation. That is how mountains move. Even when the world shows you contradiction, you do not yield. You do not adjust your faith to fit the facts. You adjust the facts by remaining loyal to your faith. You don't look to the world for evidence. You look within for assurance. You know the outer must reflect the inner, and so you guard your inner world with the vigilance of a priest. You keep the flame burning. You refuse to let the old story resurrect. And with each passing day, your outer life begins to shape itself into the image of your sustained inner vision. This is the art of manifestation, not in forcing, but in allowing, not in chasing, but in choosing. You do not need to beg or plead. You need only assume and persist. That is the true form of prayer. Not repeated words, but repeated feeling. Not desperate asking, but deep knowing. Prayer is the awareness that you are one with your desire, that it is already fulfilled, and you are simply walking the path toward its inevitable physical reflection. Every great teacher has said the same in different ways. Believe that it is done. Feel it real. Act from the end. Let the weak say, I am strong. Call those things that be not as though they were. Do you see the pattern? The world changes after you do. Reality shifts after the assumption is sustained. The invisible precedes the visible. Always, so continue, unwavering. Walk the earth not as one who hopes to be blessed, but as one who already is. Let others chase signs. You be the sign. Let others wait for proof. You be the proof. Let your very existence be the answer to your own prayer. Let your joy, your peace, your certainty be the echo of God's yes resounding in every cell of your being. Let your breath carry it. Let your posture proclaim it. Let your silence thunder with it. God already said yes, and so you no longer seek permission from the world. You no longer check the mirror of circumstance to verify your value. You live above it. You live in the unseen, the eternal, the real, because once the prayer is felt as fulfilled within, once it has moved from wish to conviction, from hope to embodiment, it becomes inevitable. You are now moving through life as if the promise has already materialized. That is not fantasy. That is divine intelligence. That is how creation works. The sculptor does not wait for the statue to appear before he begins celebrating. He sees it within the stone before a single piece is chipped away. And so must you. Your prayer is the statue. The world is the stone. Your faith is the chisel. Let the world catch up. Let the facts adjust themselves to your inner truth. You are not obligated to entertain the doubts of others, or even your own fleeting fears. Those are echoes of the old man, and you are putting him off daily. You are becoming new. Every time you assume the end and dwell in it, as though it were now, you are being reborn in spirit. You are reconditioning your soul. You are stepping more deeply into your God self. You don't need to see how the prayer will manifest. That is not your concern. Yours is only the feeling, the conviction, the joy of knowing. And as that becomes your dwelling place, the world responds. People appear. Phone calls happen. Opportunities open. And even those things which seem like losses or delays will reveal themselves as perfect steps along the unfolding path. You will look back and say, if that had not happened, I wouldn't have arrived here. Nothing is wasted when you assume it is done. Even the waiting becomes sacred. Even the silence becomes an answer. Even the detour becomes the most direct route. Why? Because you are not measuring your life by outward signs anymore. You are measuring it by inner conviction. You are the only one who must know it is done. And once you know, the entire universe must obey. That is the secret you came here to remember. That God lives in you as your own wonderful human imagination. That the power to create, to heal, to transform, to call things into being, lies not in rituals or ceremonies, but in your ability to feel it real, to accept as done that which the world cannot yet see, to believe before there is evidence, and to live as though the evidence is already undeniable. When you live that way, when you persist in that unseen certainty, you become unstoppable. You are no longer subject to the tides of fortune, or the opinions of others, or the facts of the five senses. You have stepped into the kingdom within, and in that kingdom, all things are possible. You begin to understand that nothing was ever denied to you, only delayed by your own disbelief. You begin to see how the outer world, which once seemed so fixed and immovable, bends and rearranges itself like clay in the hands of the potter, simply because you dared to live from the end. You speak less of problems and more of solutions. You complain less and celebrate more. You wait less and expect more. And this shift becomes not just a practice, but a permanent identity. The state of the answered prayer becomes your default dwelling. It is not a place you visit. It is where you live. It is your home, your foundation, your secret garden where all things blossom. And yes, challenges will still arise, but you no longer interpret them as threats. You understand them as echoes of the old self, fading into silence. You see them as tests not of whether God said yes, but of whether you believe he did. And so you respond not with panic, but with peace. You reaffirm your state. You remind yourself, gently but firmly, it is done. You feel it again. You embody it again. And once more the illusion breaks, and the truth shines through. You walk through the fire, and do not burn, because the fire is illusion to the one who walks in faith. You stand before the Red Sea, and know it will part, because it must obey the one who knows his prayer has already been fulfilled. This is not mere religion. This is spiritual law. It is precise, dependable, unchangeable. And once you align with it, your life becomes a revelation, not because it becomes easier, but because you stop resisting the truth of who you are. And who are you? You are the one for whom the prayer was already answered, the one who no longer needs to see the harvest before planting in joy. the one who trusts the unseen more than the seen, the one who understands that to act as if God already said yes is to step into your role as co-creator with the divine. So you begin to create on purpose. You stop leaving your future to chance. You stop thinking small, speaking small, acting small. You realize that it's not arrogance to assume greatness. It's obedience to your true nature. You are not here to grovel before God. You are here to express God. And every time you imagine lovingly, every time you persist in the state of the wish fulfilled, every time you choose to act from faith instead of fear, you are doing exactly that. You are doing exactly that. You are expressing the divine nature, the I am presence within you, that was never separate from the source. You are lifting the veil. You are revealing the kingdom of heaven, not as a distant paradise, but as a present reality, accessible now, through the power of assumption. And you no longer wait for signs in the sky, because the sign is you. Your shift in awareness is the miracle. Your transformation in identity is the proof. You are no longer a beggar at the gates. You are the heir, returning to claim what was always yours. There is no more striving, no more proving, no more performing. You don't need to earn what is already given. You don't need to suffer to be worthy. The yes of God is not earned by toil. It is claimed by assumption. It is awakened by belief. You can only experience what you are willing to become, so you become it. You step into it. You dwell in it with boldness and humility. And as you do, everything changes. Not because the world changed first, but because you did. Even the most stubborn circumstances must eventually yield. They are shadows responding to your light. They are mirrors reflecting your consciousness. And the moment you stop looking at them as fixed facts and start seeing them as effects, you regain your power. You stop asking, why isn't it here yet? And instead affirm, it is here now, and I'm just walking into the scene that proves it. There is a divine order unfolding. Trust it. You don't need to know how. The bridge of incidents, the mysterious chain of events that leads to your fulfilled desire, will unfold naturally, often in ways you could never have scripted. That is the beauty of faith. It removes the burden of figuring everything out. It allows you to relax into the knowing. It allows you to live in the feeling of yes, even when the outer has not yet echoed back yes to your physical ears. But you hear it within. You feel it in the silence. That whisper in your heart. That peace that passes all understanding. That calm certainty. That is the voice of God. And once you've heard it, once you've truly felt it, you never need to ask again. You only need to assume, to walk, to act, to live as though the invisible blessing is more real than the visible world, because it is. And so I leave you with this truth, etched not in stone, but in the living, breathing presence of your own imagination. God already said yes. He said yes the moment you dared to feel the desire. He said yes the moment you stepped into the vision. He said yes when you asked in silence and believed in stillness. Now the only question that remains is, will you say yes to his yes? Will you dare to walk as the one who already has what they once sought? Will you carry yourself as the healed, the loved, the prosperous, the chosen? Will you persist in the unseen reality, long enough for the seen to bow before it? Because it will, it must. The world has no choice but to conform to the man or woman who refuses to leave the state of fulfillment. So act as if, feel as if, live as if, not tomorrow now. Let your assumption be your prayer, your movement be your proof, and your faith be your foundation. For the moment you choose to act from the end, the moment you accept the truth of it is done, the whole universe aligns in your favor, and suddenly, what once felt distant becomes your daily experience. This is not fantasy. It is law, divine law, and the law once understood liberates. You are the answer. You are the sign. You are the living testimony that what you assume with faith, you will experience with certainty. God already said yes.